Well, hi, 8th graders. How you doing? Hope you're doing fantastic. You get to have the first video from me taped in 2020 some time. You've been getting a lot of the greatest hits of Keelan as you've been doing the amendments to the Constitution. But I never did a flip lesson on today's topic. Since we're moving from the Bill of Rights to the supplemental amendments, I thought it might be a good time to pause and just look at, well, how the heck does the Constitution get amended anyway? And just look at the constitutional ratification process. This should be a nice quick one. All right, so why did we leave it that the Constitution can be amended? The founders, as previously mentioned, intended for the Constitution to be a living document, meaning that future generations could adapt it to meet their needs in a changing world. Now, there's a lot of interpretation out there between those who see the Constitution as more of a living document and more of as a who are more constructionists. We're not going to get into that and how it can be interpreted in the courts, but the most overt and easiest way to keep the document, the Constitution, alive is for the people to make the choice to change the Constitution. The Constitution's been changed 27 times in its history. Those first 10 that we've been exploring are the Bill of Rights, and they kind of had to be added into the Constitution as we looked at with the Constitutional Convention in order to get those anti-federalists on board. So if you want to change something or fix something or add to the U.S. Constitution, there is a process for this, and it's in Article 5 of the Constitution. So let's take a look. So here you see first all the list of all of the amendments that have been put through, 1 through 27. In order to get an amendment, first has to be proposed. So the proposal for an amendment can come from two different places according to Article 5 of the Constitution. One, it can come from the U.S. Congress. 2/3 of both chambers have to vote for an amendment to push it forward. 2/3, 66% of the House and 66% of the Senate is a very high margin to get passed. It is very difficult with our political party system to get 2/3 of the members of Congress to agree on anything, much less a change to the U.S. Constitution. These usually have to be things that are widely held beliefs. For example, limiting presidential terms. Something that was very commonly held by many different people. It is difficult to get an amendment through the Constitution. That's why there's only been 27 in 230 plus years of history. The other way that constitutional amendment can get proposed is by each state calling a special convention to vote on this. How each state convention would select its people depends and varies from state to state. And this is definitely the much less defined of the two options. Hence, why so far only option 1 has been the only one used. None of the amendments have been put through Congress, proposed or passed, have gone through Route 2. So it's there, it just hasn't happened yet. How to ratify the Constitution. This now is in the hands of the states. Once a Constitution has been proposed by the federal government, then it's up to the state governments to ratify it, or the people of the states to ratify it. One way is for 3/4. Now, if you thought 2/3 was a high number, 3/4 is even more. That's 75% of the states have to approve a measure in order for it to pass. That is a lot. So in order to get the state legislatures, after it has been proposed, can then bring it forward and decide to vote on it, can sit on it, to vote no on it, take no action. There are a number of amendments that we're going to look at in a minute that have been proposed that just floundered in the states and never went anywhere. Another way for the Constitution to be amended through the states is to call those special conventions in 3/4 of the states in order to for the people to go in those conventions to vote on amending the Constitution. Option 1, state legislatures, has been used for 26 of the 27. The only amendment that went through option 2 was the 21st Amendment, which was banning the prohibition of alcohol, which was a wildly unpopular measure put forward by the 18th Amendment. Initially, people thought it would be a great idea. It would end consumption of alcohol, crime, all these things. But instead, consumption went up, crime went up, organized crime went up. And it was during the Depression, so people were making less money. It was just a really poorly conceived amendment, the 18th Amendment. So the only one to get revoked, canceled out, or repealed of the U.S. constitutional amendments, the 18th Amendment, was done by the state conventions. People in the state saying, we've had enough of this law, and overthrowing it with the 21st Amendment. It was really pushed forward by the people, not the state governments. Overall, there have been 33 different proposals that have been put forward to the proposed amendments that have been put forward for the U.S. Constitution. And there's a number of failed amendments. One on the calculation on how to determine representation in House of Representatives, which kind of would have been done anyway with our changing population. But other interesting ones, the banning of citizens. If you want to become a citizen of the United States, you have to forego any foreign titles that you may have. If you were a lawyer, a doctor in another country, a knight, any sort of title of nobility or office, in order to become a U.S. citizen, you would have to forego it in order to do that. That one never got passed. Before the 13th Amendment banning slave ownership, there was a proposed 13th Amendment in 1861 to protect the right to own slaves. Thank goodness that one didn't get passed. There was an amendment banning all forms of child labor, which never got passed. Here you see something advertising, pushing people to vote for that. The one that came very close to getting passed was the Equal Rights Amendment. I believe that 31 of the 50 states have voted to ratify it. And it would have given greater protection in the law based off of gender. This law was known as the ERA, and especially if you were a student in the 70s and 80s, it was still quite a controversial subject. Another one that gets brought up a lot was a proposal in 1978 to give congressional representation to the people of Washington, D.C. That also is not passed. You see the license plate of the people of D.C. taxation without representation, which is in protest to this amendment not getting passed. If you live in Washington, D.C., you're a U.S. citizen. You have to pay U.S. income taxes. You can serve in the U.S. military, but you have no voice, no vote, no representation in the Congress of the United States. And unless there's an amendment, that won't happen. So, questions for you. Why do you think that it was more than 230 in more than 230 years since the Constitution was ratified? There's only been 27 changes. And should it be easier to amend the U.S. Constitution? Explain your answer. I can't wait to read them. Keep up the great work, 8th graders. I'm so proud of all of you. Have a wonderful day.